This is a post-Christian podcast.
Welcome to the Revolution Church podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Meet Your Congregation. As always, this is Jay and Caleb here, all the way from frosty Minnesota.
From sunny Minneapolis.
Yeah, that's two months out of the year. Today, we have congregation member Brennen, who is... Where are you from, Brennen? Welcome, and where are you from?
I actually live in Minneapolis.
What?
Yeah, I actually live about 2 blocks away from Bryant Lake Bowl.
Wow. Have you been to the service?
I haven't, no.
Because you're a pastor too, right?
Yeah. I'm a pastor. I pastor in Shoreview, only about 15 minutes north.
Oh, small world.
Small world.
Did you pastor today?
I did, yeah.
Or preach or speak or talk or whatever people do in churches.
Yeah, like you would know.
Yeah. Well, cool. I guess that gives us our first question. So you pastor a church. Can you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. So I basically, I pastor at a church that I actually grew up in.
Wow.
I started as kind of a volunteer youth leader. Our youth pastor kind of left, and there was no one to kind of take the place. So I started at 18, and it just kind of kept going. And they came to a place where they're like, "Well, you seem to enjoy it. Could we pay you a little bit?" And I was like, "Yeah, that actually sounds great. Yeah, I would love to do the same thing, but make money out of it." So I've been doing this for like 7 years now, and it's kind of grown from doing youth to doing youth and young adults and preaching here and there and worship when I'm needed. And yeah, it's kind of whatever is needed in the moment, I do.
Very cool.
Yeah. What is it? A denomination?
We're non-denominational.
Okay.
Cool.
That's really interesting, man. It's full circle because you were raised in the church, huh? And then it fell into your lap, kind of thing. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it was definitely something I did not want for the majority of my life.
Smart. Smart.
Yeah, it definitely was kind of definitely growing up, it was a very like blasé thing for me, like church, because it was just like routine. And then around 16 or 17, it just kind of clicked. And then at 18, our youth pastor was just this really, I like to call him kind of a cult leader.
Oh.
And we just, he asked me to be his youth leader, and we just kept butting heads. And and I kept thinking to myself, like, oh man, like even I could lead the youth group better than he could. And then eventually he was like, oh, you know what? I think I want to try and lead the youth group.
Cool. Over what things were you butting heads?
So he would tell us, like, on a regular basis, like, I have a special relationship with God. And so anything I tell you is straight from God and can't be questioned and can't be...
Well, yeah, that's a huge red flag.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, and he stopped, like, we used to do, like, you know, talk about our weeks, highs and lows, like, play a game, and he would just, like, want to preach the entire, like, 2 hours that we were at church. So it'd just be like, let's sit down, stop talking, just listen to me talk.
I mean, he was a messenger from God. So.
Yeah, so if anyone could assert that.
Yeah, I remember one time we were on a missions trip kind of a thing, and one of the girls wanted to buy, like, a People's magazine at a gas station, and he like made her cry, and she was probably like 13 or 14, and he like made her cry because he's like, well, that's gossip, and gossip is a sin, and so if you read that, you're a sinner and you're going to hell. And I mean, it was just like really intense.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a lot of us butting heads being like, hey, I think it's fine.
Mm-hmm. You stepped in as the reformer.
Yeah,
I think she's okay.
Right. And you're a fellow podcaster, yeah?
Yeah, I've been doing a podcast now for probably almost like exactly a year now. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And it's called the Dissonance Podcast?
It is, yeah.
What's that all about? What do you talk about? Do you have guests and stuff, or?
Yeah, I've started to. So when it started out, I was mostly just trying to talk about like theology and philosophy and kind of stuff. And I found it way more interesting to talk to other people about a multitude of different topics. So basically now every season we have a topic and we go through it, and I ask different people to come on. So like season 1, I did toxic masculinity.
Right.
And I talked to a bunch of different women about their experiences from like the workplace to a different pastor friend of mine about like going to seminary and being in church. A psychologist friend of mine about kind of like why does it exist. And I'm currently working on season 2, and it'll be kind of split into 2 parts. And part 1 is going to be on white supremacy, and part 2 is going to be on just post-Christians, just what led to people kind of leaving the church. What was their life like when they were in the church? What led them to leave, and how is their life kind of different now that they have left?
Oh, that sounds really cool.
Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's been great.
So you what is it, a stand-up philosopher?
Was that, is that how you phrase it? Said on your Instagram?
Yeah, just a kind of a little joke. A friend of mine called me that because I usually just kind of, in everyday conversation, kind of just BS philosophy and theology into talks with people. I like to pretend that I sound smarter than I am.
Yeah, I know. I like to drop a few names every now and then just to sound smarter. Unfortunately, sometimes I get them wrong. Would you have a background in philosophy?
Not too much. Just kind of always been interested. In high school, I was super into Nietzsche, Freud, Kierkegaard, the classics.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Freud's great. I really like Freud. He's easy to read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what? Sometimes I do wish there was like an open mic for philosophers or pastors or theologians or whatever. Just because like I want to work on my speaking on my pastoral kind of service delivery, and I was thinking, it'd be kind of nice if it was like an open mic or something. You could just go there and work out a talk, a sermon that you want to give. So
sure,
maybe we could start that here in the Twin Cities, baby.
Yeah. Well, that's actually kind of how the Dissonance Podcast started. It started first as an event that I hosted at Honey Bar in kind of northeast Minneapolis.
Oh, cool.
It was an event. We had a theme, and I invited a bunch of different kind of from friends and family to like just people I knew who had insight. We talked about the apocalypse and all the different ways it means to people. And it was kind of like an open mic for philosophy and theology. It was really, really cool. And that was kind of the start of the Dissonance Podcast, because we had all these different people with all these different perspectives. Predicted each other, but in it there was like this really nice kind of beautiful sentiment that came out of it. And I just thought to myself, I want to do something like that, but just more often and with less work. And that's why the podcast came about.
Very cool. What is your theology or philosophy? Do you? I know that's a very broad question to ask, but I'm curious what the trajectory of your church is like, and what you're all about, I guess, in that realm.
Sure. I've never been too into labels. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big believer in if it's good, I'll take it. Yeah. So if what I'm reading or hearing sounds good and makes sense and is applicable, then I'll take it for myself. So, my church is pretty interesting. The church itself veers more towards kind of a conservative evangelical area. But in and of itself, we definitely have people who come from the entire spectrum of theology to political, stances. But for myself, I in high school was really into these atheistic philosophers and writers and really, really dug what they were saying. And then as I, kind of got older, kind of working that into Christianity and how it fit and moving into, I'll take a little bit of anyone that says anything good. So,
okay. Has your personal theology changed since you started at 18 doing the work that you do?
I would say so, probably.
Okay.
think I've gotten a lot more humble. Mm-hmm. I think when I started at 18, I was definitely under the mindset of like, I see through all this crap that Christianity has to offer, and I see through it almost a similar, like, what I see and what I believe is really is better than these people around me. And I think as the older I've gotten, the more I've seen, like, I think there's the beauty of my church is that there are people who think very differently than I do, and we kind of balance each other out. So I'm all the way over here in left field with my leftist ideas, and I preach on Sundays and I say things, and they get upset or something. We have conversations, and then they say something more conservative, and it challenges me, and I see that there is value and there is worth, and there's like this nice kind of balancing act that we do as a church and a congregation of I'm continually challenging them, and they're continually challenging me, that I don't think I would have in many other places if they weren't people that I had grown up with and loved so much.
Yeah.
That's important, though.
Yeah, that's something I think that we've been focusing on more recently is having those conversations with people that we might not fully agree with ideologically. So that sounds like good work that you're doing there, man. That's great.
Thanks. Yeah. I think it's really, really important. There's the thing inside of me that really wants to, like, when I, know someone like voted for Trump or something like that, just be like, oh, okay, well, we're not going to talk because we're not going to agree and you're just wrong.
Right.
But there are these people in my church that I'm like, no, you're a really good person.
Yeah.
And you challenge me to be a better person in many different areas of my life. So if I can hopefully do the same to you in other areas, we can make something kind of beautiful out of our conversations.
Yeah, that can be a tricky subject matter to tread through.
Yeah. I
have a lot of similar interactions with my family, or with the older generations of my family. And yeah, it's like you say, it's where it's like, I love you 100% through and through, but like this is something that we fully do not see in the same way, and so I think that's important to not just disregard someone because of something like that, so that's important stuff.
Sometimes, from my conversations with certain people, I mean, they're like, well, this is why I voted this way, and I go like, oh, all right, well then now I know your train of thought. That makes sense for the train of thought that you were on. You know what I mean? Like, you're focused on this one political thing in your area of your life and how it would be affected. And so this is how you thought this way. You're not crazy, or you're not, you know what I mean? Because it's just so easy to be like, you must be crazy, or you must be this, or you must be that. I do the same thing that they will do to us.
Put them in a box, really, yeah. Just stereotype them and presume things.
Putting people in the box doesn't seem to work very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But circles work perfectly.
But Brennen, your name's Brennen, which is funny because Caleb was saying never heard that name, and I was like, really? And I was thinking about Brennan Manning. So I think you might be the only person besides Brennan Manning that I know is named Brennen.
Yeah, it's not a very popular name. And my name itself is actually spelled wrong as well. Most Brennans have an A at the end, and I'm E.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a very uncommon name. I think I've only met maybe 2 people named Brennan.
Is it like Celtic or something, maybe?
Yeah, it's Gaelic.
Gaelic.
So Irish. Yeah, it means like dark shadow or something like that, yeah.
That's cool.
Very flattering name.
I want to be called Dark Shadow.
Brennan the Dark Shadow Johnson.
Yeah, it sounds a lot cooler being translated than...
So, how'd you find out about Revolution, and what kind of drove you to listen and be a part of what we're doing? I mean, especially, it's not usual that you hear we have had pastors on before, but it's not often that we have that many pastors who are like, oh yeah, I listen to your church.
Mm-hmm.
And just like,
I don't know how much you listen. I know you interact with us online. I don't know if you're a regular listener or not.
Yeah, I've been listening for a few months now. I think the first thing I heard was the Grace as Anarchy.
Oh, okay.
I linked in. I actually found out about you guys through multiple channels from Peter Rollins.
Oh, okay.
I'm a huge Peter Rollins fan.
Won't hold that against you. Just kidding. He's my best friend. So.
Yeah, and he posted something, and then so I think I found Jay, and from there I found the church, and was like, oh, it's it's right there. It's 2 blocks from my house, and started listening. And yeah, but
That's so wild. That's crazy.
yeah, but and it's been great. Yeah, especially that Grace has Anarchy thing too really blew my mind. Just listening to it, it was great. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm hoping to like maybe this year do another one of those, which is a little bit more in depth because I've done a little more research on anarchy since then. But yeah, it's a pretty cool concept. I mean, it's not without its contradictions, but it definitely has some really cool concepts in it. Anarchy and grace, and I think the two do go hand in hand.
Yeah. And I think, similar to how we were saying, it definitely Grace is this idea of it doesn't matter where you fall ideologically or what you believe, or, there is this grace for you.
Yeah.
That it doesn't fall on a party line or a belief or an ideology, but it's for everyone. Yeah. That is a very, kind of anarchy mindset to it.
Yeah. What did you preach about today, Brennen?
Yeah, we're doing a series of women of the Bible, and so we're just going through almost every single woman that is in the Bible. And so I did the woman who with the bleeding problem who touches Jesus.
Yeah.
And so brought it into like Leviticus and Numbers and on the idea of being unclean and what a big deal it was for her to basically touch Jesus and in that culture make him unclean in the eyes of everyone, and everyone basically had the right to stone her to death for being in this crowd and being in public, and instead Jesus says, I love you and I forgive you and you're clean and it's you can't make me dirty. And yeah, and just kind of throwing this whole idea of cleanliness and uncleanliness out the window. And yeah, the idea of he'll be with anyone. There's no person who you can't be with or associate with.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people don't realize, like, that's probably one of the reasons Jesus was killed is because he was constantly with people who were considered unclean or ceremonially unclean and dining with them and letting them touch him and then be around him, and, we say today, like, oh, Jesus was sinless. But I'm like, if you went back then and said that, they'd be like, no, look, he's friends with unclean people. He even dines with them. He allows them to touch them. He touches them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
People would have a different
I remember, Jay, one time you said Jesus was a criminal and he died a criminal's death. And I thought that was a good way to word that.
Yeah.
I told my mom that and she didn't like it so much. I also bought her Fall to Grace and I don't think she liked that very much.
Oh, awesome.
Just to derail us in a negative direction. Good job, Caleb.
No, it's understandable. I probably had to go back in time and read it myself. I wouldn't have liked it. I'm probably a little more liberal than I was then now, so that's weird. Anyway, well, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool. Hopefully we can meet someday.
Yeah, maybe we could do something with your church. Maybe
or you could do something with our church.
Yeah,
I mean, we live.
combine forces.
I live just a couple blocks from there too, so I'm probably not far from you, actually.
Yeah, this could have been a live in-person interview.
You can tell we do our research really well.
Yeah, right.
On the people we're interviewing. So I mean, so are you lifelong Minnesotan then?
Yeah, born and raised, Minnesota. Been specifically in Minneapolis for the last 3.5 years now.
Okay, cool.
So we're obligated to bring up the weather at least once during this conversation.
Yeah. It's kind of warm out there. It's balmy.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Once it gets over 30, I pull out my shorts.
Whenever you'd have somebody wearing shorts at school.
Or at church, yeah.
Church day.
We did have a...
And was it 30 degrees outside? And I wear a T-shirt. Well, man, before I ask you the wrap-up question, so, Peter Rollins, how long have you been involved with Peter Rollins' work, and, what draws you to that? Might as well give him some props.
Oh, man. I've probably been reading him off and on since high school, but I'd say it's within the last maybe 3 or 4 years that it really hooked. It was like a light bulb going off. It really started with Idolatry of God, reading that and just blowing my mind. yeah, and then with like his own podcast, is maybe the only podcast I never miss an episode of when it comes out. Just his way of seeing, I think, of seeing God and seeing the way, I think really accurately, a lot of Christians make a different God and worship that God. Mm-hmm. The idea that we turn God into an idol itself, in that we put our own idea on it, and that's the God we want, of pleasure or of money or success, or there's this idea we have, and that's the God we worship.
Your object, cause of desire.
Yeah.
He's pretty good. I think he'll have a career one day. I'm gonna try to help him out a little bit.
Yeah, you should throw him a bone sometime.
I'm gonna speak with him in Belfast. Maybe he'll
give him some advice,
help him get off the ground. Well, our last question is, and you're a pastor, so maybe you'll have some advice,
some insight, yeah.
But we're always asking folks with the meet the congregation, and everybody's kind of hearing you for the first time, me for the first time. But like, is there things that we ask? Is there things that you think that we could do to improve on our church or what we're doing, to basically make it better, make it in any area?
You're a new listener, of course, so no worries if you don't have any pent up advice.
Yeah, not that I can think of off the top of my head. From what I've listened to in the last few months, yeah, it's been great. Really appreciate the stuff you're saying, and it's awesome. I can't think of anything.
Oh, well, that's what I like to hear. You've answered correct.
Ding, ding, ding. I'll get a sound effect.
Well, Brennen, man, I think it sounds like you're doing incredible work, man. And I'm going to hook up with you on Instagram, and hopefully we can grab coffee or something soon and chat.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That'd be great. Well, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man. Keep up the good work. It sounds like it's really cool and challenging, and I like both those things.
Big props, big ups.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, bud.
Bye.
Our ministry is supported 100% by listeners like you. To make your 100% tax-deductible donation today, please visit revolutionchurch.com/donate. You can also learn more by clicking the donate section on the website.
I wasn't really aware of how many resources were out there until I started listening to you guys. And then Caleb in his podcast, just amazingness, there's so many. Once I started following you, Caleb, I started finding all these other ones.
Oh, that's sweet.
So
nice.
Yeah, that's been super amazing, super helpful, because again, I didn't know all this stuff was out there.
Hi, I'm Caleb with Post Christian Podcasting. If you enjoyed this episode, you might also like The Sacred Collective, Bipolar Agnostics.
You might also like Loosen the Bible Belt with Kristen Becker and myself, Jay Baker.
Everyone's Autonomous with Marie Delafont. You might also like another post-Christian podcast where two atheists go to church and give them honest, objective reviews. Out of the Attic. That was a post-Christian podcast.